Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I'm Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and over there I've got John, our resident Millennial. John, how are you doing? Say
That's
hello to
me.
the audience.
Hey, audience. How's it going? As for how I'm doing, I don't know. Kind of mixed feelings at the moment.
I bet you do. Hey, welcome to
Yeah.
the show, Michael Vega. Good to see you out there. We're fegs tonight.
Yep.
I don't mind being a little bit of a feg, I guess. Do I know what a feg is?
Yeah. It's kind of like a fag, but with an E instead
Is
of
it
an A.
is it a fag that couldn't afford the A?
I mean, you still have to buy a vowel. Aren't all vowels equally worthless? I thought maybe they were.
John's not like hey, Michael's not liking the vid, so what the shit that
But
say about me and kids with cancer? Well,
yeah, I
Michael,
guess if it
it's
let it be known that Michael Vega does not care about kids with cancer.
it is out there.
It's on the record.
It's noted. Does not care about kids with cancer.
Nope.
I like his little. Does that little? Is that a kid with cancer emoji? I
No, it's
see
too
way
much.
too
It
much
has too
hair.
much
I
hair.
was say too much
Yeah.
hair. Too much hair.
Way too much hair.
So, John, it's been an interesting week. There's been a little bit going on this week. Some fun stuff happening. I don't know if you've been out there listening to it, but
For the most part.
yeah.
For the
So,
most part. But yeah, no, what happened? I guess today slash last night is kind of what's on my mind at the moment.
you're talking about the mosque shooting at the mosques where the shootings occurred in New Zealand.
Yep,
Mm,
obviously.
that was some interesting stuff, which we are definitely going to talk about tonight. We probably
Yeah,
going to
of
get into a
course.
long, drawn out conversation because we have the manifesto of the shooter,
Hmm.
and we're going to kind of look through that and talk about some of the things that he had to say in this manifesto. Surprisingly enough, I found myself in deep thought at different points.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we got a couple of other things to talk about. There was a little bit of fun in Washington today. We have the president making a first, but we also have a little bit of some shenanigans going on at the college level, which I find a little bit reprehensible, if you know, to use a nice 50-cent word. Um, the things that were going on with it, and surprisingly enough, this is apparently this has been a pretty big scheme going on for a while. There's a lot going on there, and we'll definitely talk about that. So before we get into all that, John, have you from the personal side anything exciting happening for you this week? Nothing.
This week?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Since our
No.
last exciting shooting the shit show,
Yeah, no, nothing really exciting happened. Trying to think. I
Mike,
don't think so.
Michael
Pretty
Vega
much just worked.
Michael Vega says the manifesto is a nothing burger in his opinion.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but
I
aren't
mean,
they all really?
I'm inclined to agree. But I mean, I think it's still worth looking at.
Yeah. Well, with let's get the little stuff out of the way. There was a House and Senate vote, and it was about the emergency, the border wall emergency that state of emergency that Trump called, and they've been going at it back and forth, and the votes came through, and when it came through the Senate shot it down, surprisingly. And apparently, a dozen Republicans came across the aisle and sided with all the Democrats in the Senate, and and killed this. Now, that doesn't mean anything because, as of today, Trump has decided to exercise his right to veto for the first time, and has done that. He said that they have a right to shoot it down, and he has a duty to uphold the veto. Um, but it was the reason why it was shot down that I thought was interesting. For those 12 Republicans, because pretty much as a whole, those 12 Republicans were not shooting it down because of the falsification of a national emergency so much as they were making a stand against overstepping authority.
Hmm.
Would you do you think that's a do you agree with that, John? I mean, do you think he overstepped his authority here?
Well, I mean, technically he's allowed to do this, so there's nothing against the law about it. Um, However, yeah, I don't always agree with his sort of authoritarian methods. But I don't know. It's kind of a tough one because I mean, again, you have to do things like eminent domain in order to, have the land to build this wall on. So I mean, that's a problem for me. I don't like that at all. I don't like eminent domain, even if it is a fairly compensated. You know,
Is it ever really?
yeah, I don't think so. I think it was actually Styx who came up with a good idea for it. Was if you're going to do eminent domain, they should be forced to pay 10 times the property value to discourage the government from using it whenever they feel like it.
I, to be honest, I would say maybe not 10 times the value, but I would say a generational value. So over the last 20 years, what was the highest value of that property over 20 years? That way, you get a large sector. You know, the swings that go in the retail market,
Hmm.
the rent, realty market for home values. So you find the highest peak in that 20 years, and you pay that value. Paying 10 times is a little excessive. I mean, it's just you would
Yeah,
never get
it's to
something like that to
discourage.
happen, right?
Right, that's the point of it.
But you don't have, that's, but that from that standpoint, you can't discourage, you're never going to discourage eminent domain because it exists. There is, it just is what it is. I mean,
What?
they can just always exercise it. There's eminent domain exists. They can act upon it. They don't. There's nothing to curtail it unless you put like severe, laws in place that say it can't happen, and that's never going to happen. You're never going to have a
Well,
government
yeah,
body say eminent domain is illegal,
right.
because they all choose to exercise it when it's necessary. And I don't agree with it either, but yes, that's going to have to happen with the wall. He's getting much more money. I mean, he's even ramped up the amount of money he's getting now. It's over $6 billion that he's going to get his hands on, which originally he was only asking for 3.6 in the budget he proposed.
Well, that was for one installment. That wasn't for like the entire wall.
When he first asked, he only asked for $5.6 billion for the entire wall.
And
But
no, that wasn't the entire wall.
well, that's the way he made it seem. He's
That's the way that it was being
that's the way it was
presented, but
sold
not by
to
him
us.
necessarily.
Well, it's how it was sold to us. Of course, the original sale was Mexico was going to pay for it, so we're still waiting on
Right, of
that.
course. No,
Um,
we knew that wasn't going to happen from the beginning.
but back to overstepping his authority. If immigration is at record lows right now on the southern border, that brings me closer to thinking he overstepped his bounds. That he called a national emergency without due cause. But his newly appointed attorney general has said that it's all above board.
Yeah.
There's nothing stepping outside the lines, which he can call a national emergency. I get it, but I think there has to. God damn it! I don't understand why there doesn't have to be factual reason. I mean, because if the numbers are showing, you know what I mean. The Senate, and the House and the Senate made the right call in this by saying no, this is not a national emergency. You're
Yeah.
overstepping. I believe they made the right call in trying to stop it.
Yeah.
They
And I mean,
may
I don't think you should have, but I understand why he did, but I still don't think it's the right move to kind of unilaterally decide yourself, that you can just do this.
and that is I'm so butt blasted.
Yeah.
Why am I butt blasted, midget B?
Your butt is mad.
It's not mad. It's just I don't understand how we let him do these things. Like,
Well,
it's so
he
weird. He
everything he's
doesn't,
doing
checks and
is
balances don't work with him.
well, no, it does because everything he's doing is legal. Now you can disagree with those laws, which I do, but if he's doing things within the bounds of the law, he's allowed to do them.
Well, and of course, when I say that, it goes across the spectrum of all the wacky shit that goes on with him. I mean, it's just so much that we accept from him that I can't imagine we would have ever accepted from any other fucking president. You know what I mean?
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I think we would have been more accepting from any other president. I don't think any other president would have had as much backlash as he has. Because I mean, there's so many people who are just like knee jerk reaction, hate Trump. Anything he does is bad automatically, no matter what it is. He could say, "Don't kick puppies," and there'd still be people like, "What? Why would we not kick puppies? Let's go kick puppies or own Trump."
but
Like that's,
but you
I
can't
mean,
say he
come
didn't
on.
ask for that. I mean, he kind of asked for it by being himself. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what he does. He's a provocateur.
I mean, first impressions are first impressions, right? And most of America's first impression of Trump was through all his media bullshit before he ever ran for president. You know, his bad acting and his all of that. But yeah, so
Yeah,
but he pulled the veto, so that means now, if I'm not mistaken, once the veto has been used, that's the end of the line, right? They can't come back and appeal a veto. I'm trying to remember my Schoolhouse Rock.
right. Yeah, I have no idea honestly what the deal is with that. And Midget B, yeah, go ahead.
Please,
We already have copies of the manifesto, but the
hold
video
on,
would be
hold on,
good.
hold on, hold on,
I
hold on,
couldn't find
hold
it.
on, hold on. I'm going to say something
What?
about the video before we do this. Before it gets posted, they are, they are trying their best. They want this video down. They
Yeah.
want this video taken out
Well, we're
of
not going to show
media.
it on the show, obviously.
Well,
I'm
I
just saying
understand that. I just want to put it,
afterwards.
but if we put it in our Discord channel, that means it's accessible to anybody that comes to our Discord channel. I'd rather be shared with us personally, so
Yeah,
that it
yeah.
doesn't, so that we're not perpetrating spreading the video, right?
Right, that's fair.
Because they
Yeah.
are asking for it to be taken down. I mean, they've got social media, Facebook going
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
trying to figure out how they can find the source and get it all pulled down, different things
Oh,
like
yeah.
this.
I
So
mean, it took me forever to find the manifesto. I actually had to go through a special team of autists, professional internet autists, to find it.
now, to be honest with you, I'm not. I have no desire to see the video because I don't like to see that kind of shit. Like when they would do the, you can catch those beheading videos that they do over.
Hmm.
I've never watched any of them
I think it's
because I
important
just
to do that. I don't like to. It's not like something I want to do, but I think that it's important to kind of see what humans are capable of doing to each other.
yeah, I've seen that, and so I don't have to see it anymore. I know what people are capable of doing to each other. Um, I mean, and I literally, that is the one bit of Schadenfreude that I actually maintain a strong hold on to. I kill any desire to see something like that.
Yeah.
It's, it's just, it's far too cringeworthy for me. I don't like to see people die.
Yeah, no, I mean it's never a good thing,
Yeah.
obviously.
I guess it's
I
more.
just don't
I
think
don't
it's a
mind
good
seeing
idea
it on
to.
TV. I don't mind
I don't see
watching
it
it on
as well.
shows.
It's fake, yeah,
Yeah.
but I just don't think it's a good idea to isolate yourself and
No.
try and like I don't know. I guess keep yourself away from reality.
True. But it's that kind of thing that you don't want kids seeing,
No,
and
of
things like
course,
that.
yeah.
But
I mean,
but we just
yeah,
willy nilly spread that shit around, right? We don't, our mindset is we don't really care. There's far too many people in our society that just don't care about, who does or doesn't see it. They don't think about that when they're just throwing that shit out there. Yeah. See.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I saw enough of that shit like that when I was a kid. I don't need to see it anymore.
Hardcore Henry was a good movie though. I
I
liked
don't
it.
think I've never seen it.
It's pretty decent.
Mm. Is it was it like a documentary or was it a?
No, it was a first person. movie. So it's kind of like a video game where it was like a first person shooter video game movie. So like the main character was mute, he couldn't speak, and he just goes around just killing a shitload of people, trying to find the person who fucked with him. I forget exactly what it was. He was part of some sort of experiment or some shit, and then so the whole movie is him hunting down this one guy.
Who who was the lead in that?
I don't remember.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I might check it out. So
yeah,
we'll
it's
see.
pretty decent. I recommend it.
Um, Mitch, it says perhaps exposing normies to gore and shit will make them more considerate and grateful to be alive and less entitled.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, and then I see Tide Pods. Uh,
Well, I mean, again, yeah, again, I mean,
they're
that's
just, I just see
part of the
so
reason
many
that
so
they're
many kids. They're
sheltered.
like, oh, I want to try that.
Yeah, well,
You know,
because they're sheltered, they don't know, what things can actually do to you. They don't know what, going back to what Midget B was talking about, they don't know what violence is.
right.
That's why so many people advocate for violence. If you actually know what violence can do to somebody, you will stop advocating for it.
Well,
Guaranteed.
yes and no. I mean, have we not desensitized them enough with TV though?
That's not real violence. I'm talking about
That
actual violence with actual people dying,
right, but when they see it on
or
YouTube,
especially in person.
when they see it on YouTube or Facebook, they equate it to the same thing. They're just seeing more death on a screen. It's not real to them. Now, you want to take them over and watch it in person, then they might get a real fucking grasp. But seeing it
Yeah,
on the screens, none of that. That's just they sit around and have parties and sit and drink and laugh and think it's funny. I've watched kids sitting around looking at some shit like that and laughing at it. I'm like, how is this funny? What's the
yeah.
funny part to this? They don't give a shit. Too desensitized, but that's our society. Um, we we
Well,
we
they're desensitized to it until it happens in front of them.
True. That's what I say. So I mean,
Yeah,
but we live in a society where they're protected and coddled from seeing these kind of things, unless
right,
somebody walks into a school with a gun, right, or into a nightclub or something.
right. Which is, I think, part of the problem with trying to get this stuff off the internet, trying to take it down. I mean, obviously, you want to protect, children from seeing it. They don't need to be seeing that kind of stuff. But anyone a little older, so I understand why like Facebook or YouTube want to take it down. But like places like LiveLeak is where that sort of thing belongs. And now
Well,
that's been shut down in New Zealand.
that's
LiveLeak, 8chan, and 4chan are all like taken down in New Zealand. You can't access them.
right. Well,
So
I see that as for me, it's not about it's more about he doesn't deserve to have that legacy left behind.
no,
So yeah, pull the video. Pull his, 15 minutes of fame off the fucking internet if you can find it. He doesn't deserve to be on any channel. He found anywhere, right? I mean, that was the whole reason he posted it on Facebook Live. But anyway, we'll get into that.
yeah, yeah, we did kind of
Yeah.
start talking about it before
It's
it
the
was time.
goddamn, it's chat. It's these
Well, it's
people in chat.
yeah.
You see what they do to us. But anyway,
I mean, it's what everyone's waiting for.
yeah. But
That's why I suggested starting it first. Just saying, I
yeah. But
advocated
we'll just sit and
starting
talk
with it.
about that. And that'll be the only topic we talk about all night.
I'm fine with that.
Are you?
Yeah,
But we can do that. We can skip the whole college thing where, colleges are going to get reamed up the
yeah.
asshole.
I mean, we can talk about it for a second. Isn't that like the only other topic we have?
Yeah, it was really that was the only other one. I just thought it was a pretty big scandal, and I was kind of surprised that it's been going on the way it has, and people have been getting away with it.
I mean, are you surprised though? I mean, it's like, oh, rich people have, extra privileges than other people, more at 11.
Yeah, it's
I
not,
mean,
but it wasn't. I refuse to call it privilege when it was just cheating for you to disillusion us too.
I do
um,
blame the chat. Chat is cancer.
um,
Hashtag chat is cancer.
No, they were just full on cheating to get their kids in school. I mean,
Yeah,
they were basically, it was a company that was coming to parents that had money and saying your child's not going, your child's scores are not going to be high enough to get them into this school. But what we can do for a sizable chunk of money is we can put a proctor there with them and make sure that their test scores are good. And Felicity Huffman, her daughter was one of them, She went in. She was going to take it at the school, but they had their own proctor, so they suggested she take the test somewhere off campus.
Hmm.
So when she did, she had this company proctor with her. She scored 400 points above her PSAT
Yeah.
scores and got into the school. And then they pursued having it done with their younger daughter.
Yep.
Lori Laughlin from Full House fame, she's also done the same thing with her kids,
Yeah.
to the tune of like 500 grand. But they were lying, and they were like putting these kids in on
Yeah.
sports rides.
Damn.
So they were taking the little known sports like soccer and
Little known
rowing.
sports. You mean the most
Well,
popular
no,
sport
no,
on the
no, no,
planet?
no. For the schools, soccer's not as big in schools as
Not in
football
the
and
U.S.
basketball. No, these are
Not in the
U.S. schools
U.S.
we're talking about, John. Thank you for
I know.
trying. Thank you for trying to digress while you hack and
Yeah, you're
slash the
welcome, Midget B. No
conversation.
problem.
Uh,
I
uh,
don't have time to meet most of the time.
so,
It just kind of shows up
but put them on the rowing
unannounced.
team, and they're not even.
Yeah.
They're getting into school on these sporting rides through this money. They had a ring of 50 fucking people. Like even these parents that paid in are going to be facing issues. But now a lot of students are starting to sue the schools. Students that didn't get in, that got their, that lost their spot to these kids that just paid their way in. There's going to be
Yeah.
some hell to pay from a monetary standpoint. I expect tuitions are going to go up. Oh, if Michael Vega says he thought it's gone up to about 70 people, which it would
I'm sure
surprise
it's quite
me.
a few, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
there was talk about like having other people take the test for them, things
Yes,
like
they were.
that as well.
This
Yeah.
is part of what they were doing as well. Yeah, they were just scamming all across the boards and putting kids in college. And it's like
Yeah.
you can't just do that, but apparently they could till they get caught, right?
Right. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
It's only illegal if you get caught.
um, but it's I don't know, man. I I wonder if Bernie Sanders is loving this. Where he's like, okay, good. This is a blight on college education. This could push my 2 free years of community college platform a little bit.
I mean, maybe it would still be the same issue with trying to get into an post grad school and things like that.
So Michael Vega asks, how many rats do you think we're going to have flipping? I'm willing to bet you that every parent that is involved, that wasn't involved in the handling of the racketeering, I have a feeling every parent that paid money in to get their student in will fucking flip in a heartbeat if it'll
Oh yeah.
reduce sentence, if it'll reduce anything that they face.
Well, they're not
They
going to
will
get
flip on this fucking
prison
company.
time. They're not going to get prison time. They're just going to get fines.
They,
I mean,
with something
like,
this big, somebody's going to have to face some jail time.
yeah, the people who ran the scam.
Well, technically, a couple of those people, Lori Laughlin was kind of embroiled in with this thing
Hmm.
from Full House. They've already pulled her off of Fuller House because
Yeah.
they revamped the show. They started doing it again, Fuller House. Well, they've pulled
Yeah.
her off of that. But there it is. Uh, the more fucking celebrities doing dirty shit. Yeah, what the fuck? You think that money
Yeah.
makes you God? You're not Trump. But
You don't have that kind of fuck you money.
yeah, you're not Trumpable.
Right.
You're not a Trumpable. But anyway, so it'll be interesting to see where all of that pans out. I don't know if it'll have any impact on the landscape of college, but I think it's going to. I think it's going to make a big difference in the admissions process. They're going to have to get really on their dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure everything's on the uppity. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I will be willing to bet you there's going to be a lot of minority folks that are pissed off. We were supposed to be chosen first. We have priority, affirmative action. Fucking
Yeah.
white kids getting in school before us. God damn it.
Well, who's
But
really
anyway.
hit hard by affirmative action are Asian kids. They're the ones who are hit the most.
Yeah, Michael Vega makes a good point. Most will attempt to squeal, but how many will be allowed to? Yeah.
Mm,
Well, nobody's going to get hung out to dry completely, though, more than likely. I mean, like you said,
yeah,
John, the money's there, right?
that's right.
And it's interesting because, all this conversation, there's just been a conversation that's really gotten going good about paying college athletes, right?
Hmm.
They deserve to be paid because colleges are making so much money off of college sports that the athletes need a chunk of that. Well, now we see you're playing games with the sports.
Yeah.
Now we have to maybe question everything. Maybe you shouldn't be getting money for college sports.
I honestly don't have an opinion on paying college athletes because I don't know all that much about it. Don't know all about like the reasons why they don't and all that kind of
Well,
shit.
because
I
they're
don't know.
there. It's pretty simple. They're there getting an education. They're not employees. They're not being, they're not like on a football team. They're in college. But the schools make millions and millions of
Oh
dollars
yeah,
off of the every game that's played,
yeah,
and yet they drive these players to do better and succeed in school and everything. And they're fucking cash cows. For decades they've been cash cows for these colleges.
right.
Now, that's not to say that these athletes don't get kickbacks. They don't get bonuses and things under the
Oh
table
yeah, I'm
because that
sure.
does happen.
And I mean their
But
travel and stuff is probably paid for. I imagine. As again, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't keep
oh
that
yeah,
much
they
track.
don't. The schools get some places for games and shit, but they don't give
Yeah,
them anything near. They should never have to fucking pay for anything while they're in college. Not if they're making that much money for the college. But that's just my opinion.
yeah.
Money, college, it's all just a fucking game. It's just another way to build up debt. What are we at? $1.5 trillion in student loan debt in this country?
I don't know. But I mean, I don't have any sympathy for people who bitch about, oh, I have so much student debt, but I took underwater basket weaving and feminist dance therapy as a minor. Like, no, I'm sorry, you're not gonna get a job, so don't expect to have your diploma pay for your debt when you have a shit diploma.
Well, if somebody's in that much debt and that's what their fucking degree is in,
It
you
happens all
know,
the time.
but most of them are just in shit tons of debt that they'll be decades from paying off.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, there's a lot of people who have a good paying job and are still paying off debts.
If
Absolutely.
if you've never watched it, Netflix has got a show on called The Patriot Act, and this young guy, is he Israeli? He's Indian. I think he's Indian. He talks about relevant issues. One of the ones he did was on student loan debt, and the racket that he showed that it is
Hmm.
phenomenal. It's surprising. So it's
Yeah.
the money play that goes on with schools is it's just
Well,
fucking
I mean,
stupid. That's
a
private
lot of the
education
reason,
for you.
well, it's not though. A lot of it is public. Even the public education is extremely expensive. I
Yeah.
mean, but the reason that's allowed to be that expensive is, one, people will pay it, and two, they're subsidized by the government.
Well, sure. Once they privatize it all, it'll be fine.
Not immediately, and it's not gonna be perfect, but yeah, it'll be a lot cheaper, and they'll have to compete instead of being held up.
Well, maybe one of these days we'll start teaching our kids something.
Yeah, maybe.
But maybe what we should teach them is not to go and fucking shoot places up,
Yeah, good transition.
because that seems to be the way they go these days. So, John, New Zealand, two mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. 49 people killed. 49 by one
Yeah.
guy. And well, they're so far, and it's weird because uh, the the uh, the two locations are not terribly close together, and it's been a little bit weird because they haven't. They indicated that they thought he had two or three other people involved in this with him,
Hmm.
but they've not named anybody else, and so it seems, based off where we're at now, that he went from one mosque to another.
Yeah, and he didn't say anything in the manifesto about there being anyone else involved.
So, yeah, he goes into the one. He winds up killing approximately 40, I guess 41 people there, and he killed 7 more at the other mosque, which kind of leaves us at 48. So I'm not sure where 49 is because he didn't kill himself. So maybe they added one to the one of the two lists. They weren't
Well,
terribly.
it was probably the girl outside one of the mosques
Mm,
that he ran over.
there's that. Yeah.
The one that he double tapped and then ran over.
Um, so he's a 28-year-old man from Australia.
Hmm.
He appeared in church, Christchurch Court already. According to his manifesto, his intent was to plead not guilty.
Right.
He is not facing all the charges they expect him to face yet. Um, the President Trump, who was cited in the manifesto as a source of inspiration, told reporters he did not see white nationalism as a rising threat around the world and attributed such attacks to a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. He also said he had not seen the manifesto. So,
I mean, while he's right about that, that is pretty disingenuous of whoever you're reading from about citing Trump as a source of inspiration, because he did not say that at all.
no, but he, what was it that he said about Trump? Because he kind of just, I'm trying to, I
He
can't
said something about here. I'll pull it up right now.
That's what I'm trying to
Uh,
remember. I'm trying to remember if I highlighted what he said about Trump. Um, because no, he didn't. He didn't come out full on supporting Trump, but he wasn't. There were no douche comments or anything that could have gone along with Trump.
well, I mean, yeah, as a symbol, he said, are you a supporter of Donald Trump? He says, as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, sure. As a policymaker and leader, dear God, no.
Correct.
So, no, he did not say that he was inspired by him in any kind of way. That
Right.
is complete bullshit.
So now that, of course, and surprisingly, that's the New York Times as well, right?
That's
Uh,
not surprising at all.
well, okay, maybe from the old days, they used to be impartial. Once upon a time,
Used to be.
yeah. Everybody used to be, I guess,
Or
maybe.
at least we, no, at least we assume that. Just wasn't as widely known back then as it is now, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's total bullshit. Trump had nothing to do with his decision to do this. But of course, it's got to be Trump's fault, no matter what happens where in the world it is.
So
It must be Trump's fault.
I will say this: one of the reactions from leaders in New Zealand is immediately um, calling for gun change, gun law reform, right? Which this is in my opinion, here in America, it's not an appropriate response. Right. That's not how you respond to a mass shooting by saying, "Okay, now we've got to attack gun legislation." I'm never
Of
happy
course
when
not.
that
Yeah.
happens. Now, the flip side of the coin is New Zealand is not like America.
No.
New Zealanders don't have a right to carry guns.
Right.
It is very clearly defined as a privilege in New Zealand to own and carry a gun.
Hmm.
So, from the standpoint of that, their idea, this is some of their lawmakers are thinking this is going to be the impetus they needed to get semi-automatic weapons removed
Right.
because they've tried
Which,
to
by
do
the
that
way,
before and it was
it's
shut
already
down.
very difficult to get semi-automatic weapons there. It's even more stringent than getting a, I don't know, whatever they don't consider a semi-automatic weapon. Like I don't know what their laws with pistols are because those are semi-automatic, but that seems to like not be well known with pro gun law advocates don't usually know that.
No,
You say semi-automatic, they automatically think AR-15, and that's about it.
no,
And
I
most
think
guns are
the funny thing is
semi-automatic.
the first thing I think when I think semi-automatic is Beretta for some reason a Beretta 9mm comes into mind.
Well,
You
yeah, I
know,
mean that's
I
a
mean, because
pistol,
I'm
but
just
yeah.
semi-automatic pistols. So yeah, you can't just blanket say semi-automatic weapons, right? But now, I couldn't get his guns. It didn't. I haven't. Did you
I'm pretty
say?
sure
Did
it
you
was
say
in
something about it
Kiwiland.
not being a He wasn't. He didn't have a license.
I don't know if he did or not. My what I was saying off mic was that you have to have a license in order to get a gun. So you have to say, if it pleases the crown, may I have a gun? But I won't defend myself with it. I promise. Because that's not listed as one of the legitimate reasons for owning a gun in New Zealand, which is just completely fucking retarded. But anyway, uh, I don't know if he did, but what I was saying was all their murders by gun were by people who had never held a license.
So now, I will say this. In regard to their gun laws, um, you can't. As Michael Vega says, you can't have one. Can't have one for
Yeah, he
self-defense,
pressed
correct?
B instead of space button or
So
space
yeah,
button.
John, I believe it was said that self-defense is not a valid reason to acquire a gun, correct?
Right.
Right.
You have to do it for like hunting or target practice, and that's about it.
Now, it's interesting. I know that off mic you were saying it's harder there to get a gun than it is here.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas I tried to make the point that I, I feel that they're, very akin to us with their gun laws, especially, I see it as extreme leniency in their gun laws that so many people actually have guns in that country when it's a privilege, not a right. I mean, they've let 250,000 of their citizenry have over 1 million guns, upwards close to 1.5 million guns in the hands of 250,000 people. So that to me seems like kind of lenient for the structure they have for guns, where it's a privilege, not a right. Especially that 16 years of age is considered old enough to have and carry a gun, which
Yeah. I mean, I'm
here
not.
I see
I'm
that
obviously
as
not an
very
ex.
immature.
I'm obviously not an expert in New Zealand gun law. Right. I've had to kind of get the information over the past couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't know about the 16 age limit, so I'm not really sure what the
Yeah,
deal is with that. But
yeah.
yeah, I would agree with Midget B. It's only like four per owner, like an amateur. But
Um, So, for a country that
but yeah,
has a tight hold on guns like that, which you would expect being anywhere near Australia, that mindset is going to be there, because Australia is much the same way. They put some tight controls on guns.
well, I mean,
And,
I wouldn't compare New Zealanders with Aussies. That'll cause a fight.
well,
You don't want to do that.
apparently Aussies, which this guy was, he's Australian and he was in New Zealand living there.
Yeah.
And even in his manifesto, he kind of says that they're kind of interchangeable, right? Is you're Australian, you're New
The
Zealand,
cultures are pretty much the
yeah,
same.
yeah. So it's just a matter of which
I
side
just
of the
wouldn't tell them that.
well, you know, uh, I don't think it's as bad as like the Scots versus Irish thing,
No.
But um, so but both countries have very stringent approaches to gun ownership, and it's like you said earlier. What was it you said? Like 28 people have involved in shootings and they didn't have licenses, and you're like,
I
so
think
that
that was
that
just
kind of
one
proves that
year.
it's not working. But I'm like,
Well,
with
no,
it,
what I'm saying is that the people will commit gun crime even if you have all these checks in place,
yeah, well, that's
but it
true
doesn't
of any
stop it.
crime.
Well, yeah, so I'm just saying putting more restrictions on it isn't going to stop the people who already don't follow the rules.
I would say though, with 28 in 1 year, those restrictions are already putting a pretty good hold on it, whereas we have them every single day. We have shootings going on in this country every day. Maybe not on that
Yeah.
level, right? But we have had what could be considered mass shootings,
Well, yeah.
frequently over the last year. right?
We have a
A
lot more
lot.
problems with gangs than they do, and we have a
Sure.
lot more people living in, more like compact areas
And
than they
how?
do.
So my question would be to you then: is that due to their gun laws that prevent that, or is it that ours are just
Well, it's also a lot.
too easy to get?
Well, no. So you also have to think about how expensive guns must be over there. I
Hmm.
don't know of many. And they might, but I don't know of many gun manufacturers in New Zealand or Australia.
Hmm.
I mean, we make most of the guns here, so they're much cheaper to get here than they would be over there. We have to ship them over there and follow their laws and pay some sort of tariff. I'm sure,
Well, we've got
some
some
sort of
pretty
customs in there.
strict regulations on import export.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just looking at gun laws the other day. I was going through the list of gun laws that we have, and I didn't realize that I would say probably 80 to, and I'm just ballparking the number here. I don't know stats. I would say 80 to 85% of the gun regulations we have all pertain to the sale and or transfer of guns.
Yeah,
Most of it is about that.
yeah.
Very little of it focuses on, Joe Blow idiot shouldn't have a gun, right? It's mostly just about the legal sale and
Well,
transfer of
that's
weapons.
yeah. I mean, well, that's what the legal sale is. Has who you can sell to falls under the sales part of sales and
Right.
transfer
But
part of those laws.
but that was I expected to see a lot more in gun legislation. Like I wanted to see, how, of course, because I'm looking forward to this debate with Jay Edgar. So I'm
Hmm.
looking for in gun law to see where we're really being trampled on, right? Where in gun law we're really, and I was just kind of surprised by how much of it focused on that. Um,
Yeah.
and what I did find interesting, and we export fewer guns now than we used to,
Hmm.
like, and import fewer. So
Well, yeah.
imports and exports are down, but sales are way up. And
Well, like I said,
manufacturing
we
is
make
way
them
up.
here.
Yeah, well, we make more of them here than we used to, because
Yeah.
we used to import quite a bit, but now we don't. So uh, the assault weapons ban in the NFA. Well, I'm not necessarily against an assault weapons ban. I'm not necessarily against that. Only from the
I mean, they're
standpoint that,
already banned. So,
yeah, and it doesn't stop anybody. It doesn't stop people who want them from getting them if they do it the right way. Just FYI.
well, yeah, but you have to. It's
It
like,
doesn't. Even a gun that
what's
is
it called?
banned is still accessible.
What's the word that I'm looking for though? Where it's the prices are way too high to where like it's really hard to have the money to get a hold of them.
Yeah, but that's like anything else. It's like a fucking Lamborghini. If you want a Lamborghini, you got to pay the money.
Yeah, but if
I
you're
mean,
gonna
if
pay
you
all that
want a
money, you're not
weapon that,
gonna ruin your hood with by running people over, right? I mean, you're not gonna crack your windshield running people over,
I
right?
mean,
Paying that
hold
exorbitant
on.
fee
Let me ask you
to
this
get
then,
this
Joe.
car.
Does it not go hand in hand that if you're going to get your hands on
Prohibitive. That's the word I'm looking
a
for.
banned,
Cost prohibitive.
if you're going to get your hands on a banned weapon, that the cost is probably going to be up there.
Well, no, no, no. Like automatic weapons and stuff aren't fully banned. They're just extremely hard, and like Midget B finally got the word I was looking for. Cost prohibitive.
Well,
So it's
if
extremely difficult. That's why I think it's only been like 3 people have been killed since 1986 with an automatic weapon.
and is it,
Three.
uh, so
Like,
I'm good with making it cost prohibitive. If that's what keeps people that shouldn't have those weapons in their hand, it keeps gangs from getting their hands on more of them because it's cost prohibitive. Okay, I'm good with that. I mean, if a collector wants one, I have no problem with him getting his hands on it. He's a responsible gun owner. He proves that by not going out and killing people. You
right.
know,
But see, that's the thing is all these people are responsible gun owners until they're not,
well,
right?
sure.
So,
Well, are they?
right? I mean,
So a lot of the
you're not a
some of the
murderer until you are,
right.
like,
I
right?
can
I
kind of
mean,
agree with that, but I mean, if New Zealand points anything out, those 28 in the last year, those weren't responsible gun owners. They were just killers. You know, they didn't have responsible gun ownership up until the point that they had their illegal gun and went out and killed people. Um,
Right.
but you know,
Yeah, that's obviously the difference.
but here, you
Sounds
know,
like yeah.
I mean, we respect a responsible gun owner. Our rules and laws and
Not
legislation
anymore.
do
Not as much
respect
anymore.
the how.
Well, because it's becoming more. They're putting more and more legislation on responsible gun owners
What was the
because
last legislation that
they're
went
gonna be
into
the only
play?
ones. Oh, okay. So like the bump stock ban
Hold
was
on.
one. There's a whole
Okay,
bunch
so the
of
bump stock
ones.
ban was bad.
I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just saying you asked me what the last legislation that
Okay,
went
so
through. That was the last federal that I know of.
I'm sorry. Let me qualify. What was the last legislation that went through that got us closer to taking our guns away?
There's been a lot of it at the state level, different
But
states.
you're good with state level stuff.
Yeah, I'm just you asked me what it
I'm
was,
talking
so I'm
about
telling you.
I'm talking about federal legislation. What was the last legislation that went in that's getting us closer to losing our guns?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know when the last one was.
That's what I'm
Doesn't mean that there
saying.
hasn't been. I'm just saying I don't. I'm not. I don't know
The
off the top of my
last
head.
the last legislation that went in was in regards to school shootings. And there's some recent
Well, yeah,
legislation
obviously.
added to gun laws, and it really, honestly, the way it breaks it down in there, it really is just kind of like to be continued. It really had a real anything that it was talking about with schools was more like a to be continued. Like
Yeah,
basically,
like
okay,
we're
you
about to
can't,
add more.
yeah, you can't manufacture and sell guns outside a school or in a or around a school kind of thing. But you know, there we may have to deal with more as far as schools are concerned.
Yeah,
But from
suppressor ban is another one. The suppressor ban that happened as well.
when, how long ago was
I don't
that
know.
though?
It probably wasn't that long ago because I know you've been able to use them at ranges and stuff.
So the suppressor ban, though, does not qualify as taking my guns away, though. That
Right, no,
just
I mean, it's
tells
an
me,
accessory.
yeah, it's just, it's, yeah, they can take, I don't mind them taking accessories off guns. Do you need to stealth kill that fucking,
It's not how suppressors work.
do you, do you need to keep it quiet when you, as much
We
as
talked
possible
about
when
this
you
last.
kill somebody? I
I
mean,
think we
you know,
talked about this on Monday or last Friday, something
what's
like
the
that.
point to a suppressor, John?
Pointers to a suppressor is so that you don't blow your ears out when you fire
Has that
at a
become a
range.
problem over the hundreds
Well,
of
I mean,
years
it's
we've
nice to
used
not
guns?
become. Well, yeah, a lot of people were deaf after going to war or something.
Well, that's different, John. They sat around
Well,
with
I'm just saying,
thousands
there's
of
a lot of
people shooting
guns.
fucking guns. It wasn't like standing out in the woods and popping caps off with your gun.
Yeah, I mean, it's so
I
you
mean,
don't have
I've
to
never
wear
had an
like
ear
head.
problem
You don't have to
yet.
wear. You don't have to wear like headphones and those fucking earbuds or whatever.
I
Those
under,
things suck.
I understand that people would make that argument,
But
Michael.
also for practicality, I
But
mean, it does kind of make it harder for you to know where the round's coming from because it makes it sound more like it's coming from everywhere as opposed to one particular direction.
so
So
it
that is kind of like the practical use
obfuscation,
for it.
obfuscation.
Anyway, yeah. So it's a suppress. It's not a silencer in the way that like it makes it quiet. It just makes it difficult to tell where it's coming from.
Um, with loud noises next to your ears isn't generally cash money to your health. Yeah, but you know
Yeah.
what? I used to shoot. I used to put a fucking 30 gauge shotgun, a 30 gauge rifle up against my shoulder and pop that thing off round after round after round. Nothing ever happened to my hearing, enough to ever consider needing a suppressor for it. But I honestly believe the suppressor ban was to target silencers.
It's the same thing.
No,
It's
because
a
you say a
colloquial term.
suppressor only deadens the sound somewhat, spreads it out, where there are actually silencers that kill any noise coming from the gun, but a small sound. And they are real, no matter how much you want to argue. You know, it's different than putting a potato on the end of your gun. It
Yeah,
actually
they're the
kills the
same
sound.
thing.
Yeah, they're different.
Okay. It is a lot more considerate to your neighbors. That's true.
Well,
Would
you're
it
not
be?
supposed to be shooting guns off in a residential neighborhood anyway.
And that's true. Some bullets just make less noise. Yeah, I love when the chat just like rips you apart. It's pretty great.
Hey, you know what? This then why call it a suppressor ban when all in all it was about taking silencers out of the picture?
Because they're the same thing.
Okay, so if there's the same thing, then it was well worthwhile. because
I mean,
now
I
now
don't really
people have
care
to
about the
fire that gun
funds of
at the goddamn
curriculum.
liquor store owner, and everybody has to hear it. You know, I mean, but it didn't stop anybody from using them, right? Doesn't stop anybody from 3D printing one. Doesn't stop anybody from
Oh
avoiding the law.
God.
So we have laws, and it won't matter. Every law that we have is going to be avoided one way or the other. So why have them, right?
Whatever.
It seems the logical argument.
No, the point is that like just so you see these new legislations coming constantly. It's this just chipping away
I
at
see
I've
attempts at
explained this
new
so many times. That's
these
why
are
I don't.
attempts, John. You keep
No, so
saying new
this is
legislation,
why.
but none's going in place.
No, what I'm saying is no. They are going in place mostly at the state level.
But that's
So that
okay.
oh my god,
Isn't the
it's
state level okay?
not okay if it violates the Constitution. I've explained this to you so many times, but you just don't. I
Okay,
don't
so
know.
if it
You keep
violated the
saying
Constitution,
over and
why
over again.
hasn't the federal government stepped in?
They do.
Okay,
Especially
so
when the
then
NRA brings it to their attention.
okay, so
Another
then
evil
then
NRA brings it to their attention.
then unconstitutional legislation is not going through.
No, it is going through. It just takes forever before the Supreme Court will hear it or the Ninth Circuit will hear it, and then they'll overturn it or not, and then it has to go to the Supreme Court. And it's a whole
Well,
long legal process.
well, our I can understand that our Constitution guarantees our right to bear arms, but our Constitution doesn't say anything about bump stocks. It doesn't say anything about suppressors.
And that's why those are gone.
You know, but these are not things that are chipping away at gun ownership.
Not yet, no.
No, and they still haven't
Those aren't.
for decades.
But there's a huge movement trying to get rid of semi-automatic weapons.
There always has been.
Okay, they're making more progress than they ever have.
No, they're just making more noise. You get
Right, which is
that's the
progress.
problem is noise. It's not actually
Yes,
three
which means
legislations in the last this year alone have been shot down. The
yeah,
10 day
good.
the 10-day background check. No, you're not going to get it. The what was the other one that 500 foot around a school? No, you're not going to get it. I've seen 3 attempts at legislation on guns shot down. It's not like they're just willy nilly throwing legislation out there.
Well, no, they
The,
absolutely are just willy-nilly throwing legislation out there.
throwing
That's
it
why
out
it's
there.
not passing.
But what I'm saying is they're okay. They're not willy nilly
But you
getting
can't say
gun
that
law
that's
put
not.
into
You can't
place.
say that that's not an attempt to suppress gun rights. You can't say that it's not if they're throwing it all out there trying to find something that sticks. They're trying to
The,
limit the amount of guns that you can have, or what kinds of guns you can have, all this kind of stuff. It's chipping away, or at least an attempt to chip away
okay,
at the Second Amendment.
so you can attempt to chip away all you want, but it's not happening. I mean,
Not yet.
it's not
Wait
succeeding.
till there's a Democrat majority again.
Bullshit. We've had Democrat majorities, and we still have guns.
Yeah, but we weren't having the same problems with school shootings and stuff back then. When Obama was president, wasn't nearly as much of that.
Mm, I would have to say that they kind of got kickstarted. Didn't How many school shootings did he have to deal with?
I don't know off the top of my head, but probably not as much. I know they weren't getting as much coverage. It was really Parkland that really, you know, just shot all that kind of stuff into
I can
the
think
mainstream.
is internal suppressor. What kind of are there guns with
Exactly.
internal suppressors?
Yeah,
Like what?
where it's built into the gun. I don't know off the top of my head which ones do and don't. I'm sure Michael Vega will tell you in a
Or
moment.
are they not allowed to manufacture those anymore?
I mean, they probably are.
So I don't know. I mean, does the internal suppressor fall under the suppressor ban? And if so, or if not, what weapons carry an internal suppressor? Um, I'm not familiar with internal suppressors on guns. That's kind of a
I
newer
don't know.
thing in my mind. I wasn't aware of that. Um, see, I don't, and it's when it comes to what guns are made. It's I don't know. I think there's, you know, going the direction of the gun manufacturers is not the right way to go. In looking at the problem or and telling them that they can't build it. So, like, if they have a gun with an internal suppressor, I think it's kind of shitty to say, okay, well, now you can't manufacture that anymore. But,
Well, not only that, but you can't own it, and you're responsible for destroying it with no compensation.
But a judge just allowed the Sandy Hook shootings, the Sandy Hook victims, the lawsuit that they are bringing against Remington. A judge is going to allow that to move forward.
Which is so stupid.
It's absolutely fucking stupid. To
Yeah.
go after the gun manufacturer is one of
Yeah,
the
I'm
dumbest
glad. I'm glad
things.
you think that way because I could have put you on trying to hold them responsible. So I'm glad that you that you don't think that way
So,
because that is just absolutely stupid.
Michael, to answer that, I mean, okay, so if you're asking this as a hypothetical, well, like I said, if it's a part of the gun, like if it's an integral part of the gun that's built into the gun, then I don't know if you do an exceptional case with that or if it's a necessary thing. Okay, so they exist. So they're building them in to prevent to diminish sound. Are we manufacturing them here in this country, or has that been stopped because of the suppressor ban? Or, more importantly, is this a new thing with guns that started happening after the suppressor ban? Like, is this technology that was advanced after that happened? Without a lot of knowledge, because like I said, unfortunately, I didn't realize that there were guns with suppressors built in, because that seems like it would be kind of a nice thing to have, just because they can be loud. But no, I didn't know. No, if it's a part of the gun and it's banned, I mean, it's no different than telling a manufacturer you can't make and sell machine guns. I think it falls under the same thing. If it's banned, it's banned. Um, I mean, gun laws are really it's really tough shit because when it's all said and done, there's Americans asking for one thing and there's Americans asking for another, and whose side do you
Yeah, of
take,
course.
right? And you say, okay, you take the side of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we take the side of the Constitution doesn't say anything about, like we said, accessories, this, that, and the other thing. So as long as they're not stopping you from bearing arms, if you have a legal right to own weapons, and they're
Hmm.
not stopping you from getting the guns. Now, when it comes to the parts of the gun, well, okay, so, are there other, what makes what can be removed from a automatic weapon to reduce it to semi-automatic, or does it work the other way? I think you have to add something to make a semi-automatic.
Automatic.
Is there something you have to do with the firing pin? Like you have to rework it, or you just
Well,
can't
yeah.
rework
There's a
the
piece.
gun?
It's a piece that you can buy, but I mean, it costs about as much as an automatic weapon anyway. So you might as well just get an automatic weapon, because you have to
Right.
go through the same licensing stuff to be able to modify
Right.
one of those. So I mean, it's really not worth it.
But yeah, I mean, we go after we look at the wrong directions in these things. It's um, if gun owners have the guns in their hands, I think it's a little to say I have my guns, but I don't want regulation on them. Yet most gun owners will turn around and say some regulation is good. Right? I mean, that's the part about the Second Amendment that's really frustrating because
Hmm.
it clearly says no infringement, right?
Shall not be
Shall
infringed.
not
Yeah.
be infringed. Now, the old definition of infringement is very similar to the current one, where basically you not be stifled. You won't be stifled. Okay, so we can say okay that the 3-day waiting
Yeah.
period is stifling, is infringing upon it, but
Well, that's how they get around it.
upwards to 90% of the population agrees that the background check is a good thing.
Sure. But
But
yeah,
it's
no, I mean that's how
regulation.
they get around. Right, but that's how they get around because they're not stopping you from buying the gun. You just got to wait a couple days. You just got to do this. You got to jump through this hoop. You got to jump through that hoop, and then so they're just trying to add more and more hoops because they can't actually get rid of it completely. At least not at this point.
Hmm.
We'll see what happens in the future, but
Well, like the latest 10-day waiting period, it wasn't so much about making people wait longer to get their guns. it was in response to the FBI not doing their job fast enough and too
Yeah.
many guns falling through the cracks, too many background checks falling through the cracks, and leaving shop owners the ability to just give the gun without the background check being complete. So it wasn't. See, that one wasn't an attempt to stall people from getting guns. That was like, this
Yeah,
is
I'm just
some
trying
way
to
for us
let
to try and,
bureaucracy catch up.
right, so the bureaucracy can keep up, right? Because there's so many
Hmm.
people applying these days and so many people buying guns these days, we can't keep up.
Yeah.
So, but I understand people looked at that and said, 10 days? No, fuck no. Now you're just trying to make it more difficult for us to get our guns. But it really wasn't the case. When you look at the numbers and why they were doing it,
Yeah.
it was all about bureaucracy, trying to keep up with the flow. Now I told you off mic, that means the FBI's got to step up, right? In getting those background checks done in the right time frame. But they also got to step up on the other side, where I mentioned to you, they're not catching nearly, barely a fraction of the people that are actually stupid enough to do a background check when they are a fugitive from justice.
Yeah.
But they only catch like 13% of these people and bring them to justice when they've been given the information of where to find them.
Yeah.
Isn't like, what the fuck?
Because bureaucracy is inefficient. It's
Right.
bloated and inefficient.
I mean, do we if you had your druthers, John, and just would you prefer that we went back to the way it was, say, in the late 1800s, mid 1800s, where we were just all pistol packing Pete's and gunfights in the street with no regulation on guns?
Well, so I don't think the problem was no regulation on guns. The problem was prohibition was going on at that point, which means that there were a lot of bootleggers out
No,
there
no, 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 no,
competing.
no, no, no.
Yes,
You're
that's
you're
exactly
you're
what it
too far
was.
forward. You're too far forward. I said mid 1800s, 1800s.
Okay, so there weren't a
That's
ton of gunfights in the street.
Did
There
you
was not
go
like
to
people
the
weren't
Old
just.
West? Have you ever seen pictures from the Old West? Everybody was strapping a gun out in the West.
Yeah, and the whole like, oh, the
Even the dandies in New
duel at
York were
dawn
walking
and
around with
stuff.
22s in their sleeve.
Right.
Everybody had fucking
And
guns.
it was a much more polite society. I mean, this whole idea of like people just mass shooting each other all the time. That's a Hollywood
No, it is.
idea. That was not a thing that
Okay,
happened a
so
ton
that
of.
that shootout
Didn't
at the
happen a
OK
lot.
Corral that they documented in these gunfights that they've documented throughout history, that wasn't happening. That's
I
Hollywood.
didn't say it never happened. What I'm saying is it didn't happen nearly as much as you were
I
led to
believe it
believe
happened just as often as school shootings did.
back then.
Yeah, I believe that
That wasn't all
gunfights
that
were just
much.
as common as school shootings are now.
No.
Bullshit.
And if they were, well then, okay, obviously regulation hasn't worked. If we're shooting
They
each other
didn't.
just as much now as back then,
No, no,
like,
no. There's
that's fucking stupid.
okay.
Then.
School shootings and gunfights on the street. That's
Oh,
Apple.
so
That's
it's
it's
better
two
when
different
it's
things. It's the frequency that we're talking about, John.
so you
It's the
prefer
frequency.
when it's in a classroom then.
No,
Like, come on.
no. Don't twist it. What I'm saying is there was no regulation back then, and people were getting shot in the fucking street. We were okay with that because people
Well,
had
no,
a
they
right
weren't
to
able
wear
to.
and bear arms.
We were not okay with that because you're talking about the Wild West. They weren't like there was no way to enforce most of those laws
Shit, those
because there
towns
were
had.
like two people in
They
a
tried
town.
to enforce some of it. But they
Tried
couldn't.
to.
They couldn't keep up because every fucking buddy had a gun.
Yeah,
Everybody had a gun. Even little
right.
fucking Jimmy had a gun. I mean,
Fucking right. And it
everybody
was a
had.
much more polite society.
Why do you say it's polite when two people try to gun each other down in the street?
That's
That's
not
not fucking polite.
that's not what I'm saying. Don't straw man me. It's
But
not
we
what I'm
also,
saying.
but there was also different standards then. We had a polite society because we had control of society to a certain extent in the cities.
No, because you
In the
know that if you
East.
insult someone, they're liable to pull out their gun and shoot you. So you might you're on your P's and Q's a little
I think
more.
it was because
You
we
know,
kept. I think it was because we managed to keep women in their place.
is that what you think?
No,
I didn't think
I
so.
didn't say that out loud.
No, you didn't. No, I mean it goes to like I said, it was a more polite society. You didn't risk offending somebody else because they could just shoot you.
Yeah.
That's when you had yeah,
Unless you thought you were
hashtag
faster than them.
hashtag repeal the 19th. But no, I mean they even had a sense of honor. You know, you'd be like, "Oh, meet
There was
me,"
some.
you know,
I won't
in the
say there
street
wasn't,
at this time.
but
I think we need to bring that back.
that
Bring it
same
back to
mindset could not exist in our present day society.
well, yeah. There's just too many people now,
Could you
and they're
imagine
living too closely
no
together.
regulation on guns in this current society?
It would be
Madness.
crazy for a few years, and then people would start getting their shit together, and they'd be
It would
like,
be
"All right,
crazy.
listen, hey, let's not all kill each other. Hang on, let's have some, you know,
So
let's have some
you're
decorum
willing to
here."
sacrifice however many people
I
for
didn't
a
say I
few
was willing
years
to
of
do that.
craziness?
I didn't say I was willing to do that. I was just doing I was following your hypothetical
Should guns be regulated?
slightly.
Then you don't support the Second Amendment.
It's right, not at all. I don't support it at all. In fact, you know what? Just go ahead and repeal it.
I'm just curious. Does that argument not hold water? That if you are for any amount of regulation in gun ownership, then that
No, it
goes
doesn't.
against the Second Amendment, which says shall not
No,
be infringed because regulation is infringement.
no. I don't believe that people should be able to own a nuclear weapon on their own.
Well, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it does. It says that you should have the same. It doesn't say that, but some of the intent behind it was that the civilians should
Ah,
have the same weapons that the military has.
well, we can say that that intent was behind it, but until we have
That was
somebody,
the intent.
where was that written?
I believe it
Who
was
wrote
written in the
that?
Federalist Papers, but I'm not 100% sure on who wrote that. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. Let me look it up.
Because whoever wrote that and told what the intent of it was had damn well have better been on the Constitutional Congress that put that shit
Yeah,
together.
yeah, it was. It was one of the founding fathers. Uh,
But I will say, the intent then could in no way, shape, or form be the intent today. Because you fucking sure as hell don't, like you said,
well,
you
that's what
don't
I
want
just
the
said.
citizenry
Yeah,
having it,
I
right?
don't want them to have nuclear weapons.
So, can we, that kind of validates my point that the spirit and intent of the Second Amendment, written at the time it was, really holds little bearing on the intent that would be needed today to put the same constitutional amendment in place. If we were to rewrite the Constitution, I can promise you that even you, as a supporter of the Second Amendment, would not want it worded the way it is now.
Wait, can you say that again? Because I was trying to look up who it was that said that.
If we were rewriting the Constitution in the present day and age, would you agree that the Second Amendment could not be worded the way it is to leave that much ambiguity?
I don't know if I accept the premise. I wouldn't want it rewritten.
So you,
Not because I think it's perfect the way it is, but because I don't trust anyone to rewrite it.
well, yeah, but you can't if you go down that road, then you can't trust anybody about anything, and so we can't have law. You know,
No, it's
I
not that
mean,
we can't have law. What I don't want is the Bill of Rights to be revised. Because revised doesn't mean it's going to stay in there. Doesn't mean it's going to be recognizable for
well,
any of the Bill of
I
Rights.
can see that. I can see what you're saying there, right? It depends on who's involved, right?
Right? They're going to be allowed to put all kinds of asterisks, and those are not okay.
Because I refuse to believe that it would need to be like Republicans and Democrats. No, it needs to be a cross section of the citizenry involved in that, from all
Even
age
that,
generations, from
I
all
can't name a single
minorities. You
person,
know,
even someone who would mostly agree with me, even myself. I wouldn't even trust myself with rewriting or revising the Constitution.
well, I will always stand on the ground that the Bill of Rights, written when it was, and this applies to all of them. Unfortunately, the intent of the time is not relevant for the time today because
I
they
mean,
had no
no, but
fucking idea what was coming.
the
They had
guiding principles are.
the guiding principles are one thing, John, but
Hmm.
the guiding principles that set up the Constitution do not apply either. We don't have those guiding principles anymore. We have
We
a
do.
fucked up set of principles these
They're
days.
enshrined in the Constitution. Those are the principles that this country runs on. Or hypothetically, of course. Theoretically, I mean, they theoretically run on those principles.
Theoretically, because if
Yeah,
we were run on those principles, we wouldn't have discussions about what needs to change in the Constitution. You know what I mean?
right. Well,
These
we'd be more
discussions wouldn't
likely to
come up.
blame. We'd be more likely to blame the person who committed the crime as opposed to the tools that they used
Hmm.
to commit the crime.
Which is what we should always be doing,
Right, but
right?
that's not what we do.
Um,
Because we have this culture where people aren't responsible for their own actions.
no,
It's always
not
some external
anymore.
force that made them do something. No one is to blame for anything that they do.
Well, it's just here in the house, someone just recently lost their job, and it wasn't
And see,
because it was because the phone alarm didn't work.
mm,
Now it worked all the other times, but this
yeah,
day it didn't work. The alarm didn't go off.
and see,
So
Michael
it's the
Vagan makes a
phone's
good
fault.
here. A cannon can kill a whole lot of people, but they advocated for having those for everybody, should you have desired. In fact,
Sure,
it was encouraged.
sure, because they wanted to make sure that if they needed roll your cannons out. We're being invaded.
Yeah,
Roll your cannons out. We got to protect the country. Come on, militia, let's get out there.
yeah.
I mean, it's you got a barn, you got room to store munitions. That way, we don't have to find some place to store everything, right? We want the citizenry armed like we are, and that made sense back then. It made a
And you
lot
can
of
still
sense back
and
then.
you can still get a cannon right now.
But
It's
it
completely legal to just
sure
either build or buy a cannon.
isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
You would think with all of this slippery slope gun legislation that you wouldn't be able to this day and age.
Well, there's not a lot of cannon-based crime going on,
But
so
I think that would have made much more impact, say in Oklahoma City many years ago. That would have been so much more glamorous had he used a fucking cannon instead of a
yeah.
fucking. It'd have been like he comes rolling up the street with a cannon on and sits and sets that whole fucking thing up. People would have stood around watching. What the fuck is he doing? What
Would
is
have been
he
better if it
doing?
was a horse-drawn cannon.
Oh my god, that would have been perfect, right?
The fucking 12-pound. Oh man, that would be awesome.
But
I would love to fire a cannon, but yeah, no. I mean, you can buy any gun without any kind of background check or any other regulation if it's made before 1898. I believe that's the year. Anything made before 1898, you can buy without any kind of regulation, background checks, nothing like that. You just pick it up and go home. And there's not a lot of crime with those. You don't see a lot of flintlock, pistol crimes and
right,
things like that.
it's a little harder to do a mass shooting with one of those.
Oh well, yeah, yeah.
Hold on,
But
I
you can
gotta
still
reload. I gotta
you can
reload.
still put a big ass hole in somebody though.
Sit your asses back down. I'm not done. Hold on, where'd I put that shot?
Yeah.
Better.
Forget to take the ramrod out and it goes flying out. I actually saw a video recently of someone doing that.
Shoot, left the ramrod
Leaving,
in.
yeah, and it fires. Yeah,
But
you just see it go like wobbling through the air. It was pretty great.
do you so if you're a history guy, you like to think about, contemplate these things. Would
Great
our
shot.
would our
Fuck yeah, dude.
would our constitutional Congress, if they were alive today, to see our present society, would they write the Bill of Rights the same way? Would they write it the same way?
Probably. They would probably be very pissed off at the fact that the federal government is as large as it is now. That is not at all what they intended for it to happen.
Well,
Not even close.
sure, but
So they would be super pissed off about that to begin with.
well, but doesn't so on that point, is it not one hand washes the other, that the larger your population gets, the larger government has to get? Is that
Not the federal government.
is that not necessary for the federal government to not need to have more impact on a larger country? I mean, it's one thing to have a population of 50 million people, and then another 250 years later to have a population of 350 million people.
Yeah, so
You
that's what
need more
state. That's what
government for that,
that was the
right?
whole point. That was the whole point of having the states having more power than the federal government.
Okay.
was because it's easier to control, or not to control, but to govern a smaller group of people than it is to govern all the people at once. Especially with one size fits all solutions, those never work because each state is different, both geographically, economically, um, all these different factors that go into what a state is capable of doing, what a state is capable of enforcing, what are different. I mean, look at the huge difference between, I don't know, a place like California and a place like Oklahoma. They have vastly different needs. They're vastly different people with vastly different cultures. I mean, they could be their separate countries. They don't need top-down control and one-size-fits-all solutions. They need to govern themselves in the way that they see fit.
Okay, so and then that always leads me to the question: then why aren't we just 50 different countries?
Because the federal government wanted more power as they got larger. As they've
So
got more, they're saying we need more, we
so
need
the
more.
better thing to do
And
is
the
get rid of the
individual,
federal government.
not completely,
100.
no.
Why not? Then we could
Because we
be in
still
separate entities.
because we still need them for things like interstate commerce. We still need them for foreign policy, especially foreign policy
No, if we got rid of the federal government and
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 contract
every state
enforcement.
was their own state, their own entity, then you don't have to worry about it. They can set their own standards for interstate commerce for the
And
states that border
they
them.
also enforce the Constitution, whereas the
States can enforce
states are
their
not,
state constitution.
but they don't have to.
No, what
What
I'm
happens if
saying
they
is,
don't?
if we get rid of the federal government, then we don't have to worry about it. States will just enforce their own state constitutions. We don't have to worry about the federal government. We can
Yeah,
get rid
no,
of the
that's not.
Constitution as a whole.
No, I don't. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good idea.
So you want to be an entire one country?
Yeah,
Why?
because we're the United States of America.
No,
We have a lot of
we're.
things in common. Yes, but we're also very different
I
in
find us
different
very
states.
far from united.
Well, no, but I mean the states are.
Hmm.
It's the people inside the states that are not with people in other states or even amongst themselves, I guess. But no, I don't agree that we need to get rid of the federal government. They do serve a purpose, but they've overstepped their bounds a long time ago.
I think united is the oxymoronic word in our name. I don't find us united
Yeah,
anymore, even in any
certainly
way,
not.
shape, or form. I find us nothing but fractioned factions all over the country. That's all we are. Is we're all individuals. We're all important. The collective doesn't matter anymore. We need the Borg. So let's speaking of that, let's look at some highlights from the manifesto.
Yeah, let's get back
Um,
to the thing that we started talking about
well, we're
a long
still
time ago.
talking about it in a sense. I mean, this because and I'll point out why, because he called the ball in his manifesto, right? He did some question and answer stuff in there, where one of the questions he asked, or he said that someone would ask about this. Where did it go? Come on, I know I highlighted you. Remember when I highlighted you?
Are you showing it on the screen? No.
Not yet.
God damn it.
Wow. Oh, no wonder. Okay, so anyway, I can't highlight with the one that's on the screen because it's on a
It's a
web page. So,
PDF. Oh.
well, it's an HTML PDF. I had to
Mm.
download the PDF to be able to have one that I have highlighted, which I thought I had pulled up. Oh, there it is. There we go.
Mhm.
So anyway, he asked the question, or basically points out that this question would be asked of him about whether or not he, expected that if he understood that this was going to have an impact on weapons use or weapons legislation in the United States, right?
Mhm.
And his answer to that was absolutely. This is what I hope happens. He wants us to fight over guns, and basically said that that Americans said that they would fight to keep their guns. Now it's time to prove your point. Yeah,
Where are
here's a
you reading
question.
that? Because you don't.
Here's,
I was gonna
here's
say you don't have it on the
I've got
screen.
two. I'm trying to find it in the one place and the other. Like I said, I can't highlight it, John. Maybe if you were doing something besides sitting
What are you
there.
talking about? What am I? Oh my god.
Yeah,
What am I supposed to be doing? You're the one in
I don't
charge of
know.
the OBS and shit.
I'm
So
just
fuck
trying to
you.
find the right page on one and
You're
find it
just
on
trying
the
to
other.
blame me for your ineptitude.
Hey, it's because you're just sitting there waiting, like a
Waiting for you
goddamn,
to do your fucking job, boomer.
like another entitled fucking kid. You kids and your entitlements. So here's
Yeah.
where it is. Here's where he asked it. So he said, "Won't your attack result in calls for the removal of gun rights from whites in the United States?" From whites in the United States.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's probably
I love
true.
how he made that question so pointed because, of course, gun laws here only affect white people, right?
Well, no. The point is that the left is gonna say like white people with guns are dangerous, and it's because it's mainly
Yes.
white people who are committing school shootings and things like
Because
that.
of course that's an argument that we make.
We
If
don't make that argument, but
Well, that's what
that's
I'm
I mean the
saying.
left
I
does as
mean,
well.
no, I'm saying I've not heard anybody make that argument that it's white people doing it.
Oh, I have.
Only
You're
when
just
it
not looking in the right places.
I'm not looking in any place where it's become loud enough to be heard by the general public.
By the mainstream media, no. Just go
And
check out
that's
any
all that
random
matters.
blue. No,
You're irrelevant if the mainstream media is not putting it out there for everybody to
talking
see.
about like, blue check marks on Twitter will say shit like that all the time.
Sure. Okay. And it does them no good. But his answer is yes, that is the
Okay.
plan all along. You said you would fight to protect your rights and the Constitution. Soon will come the time. So he's hoping to cause issues here in America just as well as he is in his own country with gun rights.
Right.
Which I'm like, I think you're kind of shooting in the wrong ballpark there because that's not the kind of thing that's going to do it here. You got to do it here to get us up in arms about gun legislation.
That's not true at all.
I think that we are much more demanding of gun legislation from the left, as you want to call it, than when it happens here on our soil versus when it happens somewhere else.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of that same talk again. Let me go to Twitter real quick.
Sure.
I'll show you some stuff.
You'll have people, but I have yet to read one mainstream article that says we need to tighten up our gun laws so this doesn't happen.
Yeah, give it time.
Our reaction was to just watch because today was a holy day.
Oh,
So
wow.
our reaction was to watch mosques and hope that we could forestall anything like that happening here.
Guess what? It's not even trending anymore. Weird.
See, it didn't happen here, so it just goes out of our peripheral very quickly. We don't care.
That's really strange. I'm actually like kind of really surprised about that.
I expect to see more. What am I thinking? Anti-Semitic talk, going on in this.
Well, I mean,
as
he
opposed
wasn't.
to guns. I'm talking about this is we had this happen not too long ago here last year at a mosque here in America. Where was it? Up in Pennsylvania. So, and then it happens there. There's a lot more anti-Semitic talk hitting the media right now. I think that's going to be the bigger talking point than whether or not we need gun regulation here because somebody in another country on the other side of the fucking world where the water spins the other way shot some people, right? That's us.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna hop on the bigotry bus as opposed to the gun bus on this one.
Interesting.
Conspiracy intensifies.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting about this guy, and it really made him like, it kind of kills his talking points to me, but it won't for others. So he said one of the questions that he puts forward is on page 17, and I'm on 17. Here it is. Did you always hold these views that you have?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, no. When I was young, I was a communist, then an anarchist, and finally a libertarian before coming to be an eco-fascist.
An eco-fascist.
It's an interesting word for it, right? But
Yeah.
you know, I mean, just to preface, he very clearly states in the manifesto he doesn't have a problem with other races. He doesn't have a problem with homosexuals. He doesn't have a problem with anybody as long as they stay where they came from.
Right, that's pretty standard
The,
ethno-nationalist,
so,
talking points.
so I don't know that he's an eco-fascist. He should be an ethno-fascist. Maybe that's the correct word, right? Or is it?
Mhm.
Is eco-fascist a thing? Because that sounds
No,
like
not
he's
really.
talking about. Well, he does say that in one part of it, he does make a reference to the environment, and
Well, yeah, Australia has a very heavy culture of being eco-friendly and preserving the uh nature, preserving the environment. So, I mean, maybe that's where he got it from.
well, he sees this immigration and this widespread increase in minorities in white quote unquote countries as a problem for the environment. Like he tried to equate it as an issue. That's where the problem with the environment stems from. Keep people in their place,
Hmm.
using the resources that they need to be using, this, that, and the other. Let's not running around breeding all the time and wiping out whites. That's bad for the environment. Kill whites and it's bad for the environment. Okay, so another question, and his answer to this was kind of interesting to me. Um, the on page 20, so I got to scroll this one to 20. There we go. All right, so the question is democracy is the only solution. Why are you committing to force? And he says democracy is mob rule. And this one I thought you might actually, this is one of those where you might get a little light bulb over your head or pause for a moment.
No,
Because you've said
it's
this.
not true. No, I
Some of
disagree
this.
with
You've said some of this. You've said democracy
true
is mob
democracy
rule.
is,
Right.
but he's not. But that's not what we live in. We don't live in a true democracy. So
Okay.
his premise is false to begin with.
Well, our democracy is kind of run by mob rule in a sense, except,
Well, no, because there's not one mob.
well,
There's
that's
a
true.
couple of mobs, and they disagree with each other vehemently.
Technically, if isn't majority rule considered mob rule?
Well, no, because you still can't violate someone's rights. That's the whole point of having rights is to protect from the tyranny of the majority, which is what he's talking about.
Okay, that's not what I asked you. I said, is majority rules, if the majority rules, is that not very similar to mob rule? If the
Again, no, because you still can't violate somebody's rights. With true mob rule, like he's talking about, yes, you can. You can do that, but you can't do that in this country, at least.
Okay, because I've talked about having a true democracy, and if everybody, in a democracy votes one way, you say that's mob rule.
Yeah,
But isn't that just everybody agreeing? Like if
it
they
doesn't. I
vote?
mean, okay, yeah. I mean, we can all agree. Like, we can take a vote in this chat right now to beat the shit out of you. Does that make it right? Does that make it okay?
The right or wrong of it is that even if it's constitutional, if a law goes into, if a president is elected by the majority, that's constitutional. Is that not the mob rule? Like, is
It's
that
not
that fall outside
constitutional
mob
because we
rule?
don't do the popular vote.
Hmm.
Like, that was by design. The electoral college was by design. Whatever your opinion on that is we can. That's a different argument to have. But the point is, we don't have like the popular vote doesn't decide who the president is.
Hmm.
So no, we don't even have a true democracy in that point
Hmm.
or in that way. So no, I mean, again, his premise is false here. But
Because
again, he's just trying to stir shit up. I mean,
because I
really,
kind of I kind
that's
of
what this whole
I've
manifesto is about.
I've
Just
always
stirring shit up.
I've always thought the way that we weight the House and the Senate, either Republican or Democratic, I've always thought that is a way of
Well, yeah.
introducing mob rule into the House and the Senate.
Well, we're not supposed to only have two parties. I mean, George
Well, we were
Washington.
originally one party, weren't we?
No,
I thought we
George
split.
Washington, in fact, on his way out with his farewell address when he was leaving the presidency, warned against having a two-party system.
Well, that's what I said. We were originally intended to be a one-party system.
No, we weren't intended to have any political parties.
How can you not? How can you have government without at least a political party? Like
Because you're
you.
supposed to be elected based on your merit, not on what letter
Oh,
is next to your name.
okay. So, like the first election, though, when George Washington was elected, there weren't Democrats and Republicans at the time because
Right.
The Whigs came in first after George Washington, right? That
Well,
was
there were the
later on.
Whigs and the Democrats were the two parties that came after. But before him, there were no parties because there was
Right.
no United States government before he became president.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway, it says democracy is mob rule, and the mob itself is ruled by our enemies. The global and corporate run press controls them. The education system, long since fallen to the long march through the institutions carried out by the Marxists, controls them. The state, long since heavily lost to its corporate backers, controls them, and the anti white media machine controls them. Do not suffer under the delusion of an effortless, riskless democratic victory. Prepare for war, prepare for violence, and prepare for risk, loss, struggle, and death. Force is the only path to power and the only path to true victory.
Yeah, watch yourself, man. Don't cut yourself on all that edge. No. I mean,
Um,
Jesus, edgy motherfucker. He's someone who really thinks that he was going to accomplish something. And I mean, he kind of did in a way. Like people are reacting the way that he wanted them to. But I think that he thinks it's going to have a much more far-reaching effect and last a lot longer than it will. I don't think we're going to be talking about this in a week.
the manifesto or the shooting?
Yeah, either one.
See,
And even if we are still talking about the shooting, the manifesto will be long gone by then.
right.
It'll be memory hold quick.
Because he claimed that he had a 274 page piece written up, and then in a fit of
Yeah,
rage 2 weeks before the shooting, he deleted the whole
deleted it.
fucking thing, and this was all he got put back together in that 2 weeks
Yeah.
time. Now, how fucking pissed off are you that you just throw out
Well, I don't think he
your
said he was
entire
pissed off.
manifesto? No, he said in a
I,
rage.
I
You,
thought he said no. He said it was like he was being self-critical, like he
oh,
was critiquing
self-critical.
himself
Well,
too much. That's
as a
different. I mean,
writer, well, as a writer, whenever I'm self-critical, I get pretty pissed off at myself. So I kind of equate it to that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, but you
all
probably
this
shouldn't.
fucking work wasted. God damn it. You know, it's kind
Yeah,
of a
you
rage
probably
moment.
shouldn't delete it all. Go back and fix it. But whatever, it
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
matter.
I
I'm
wouldn't have
gonna.
deleted it either. But I liked it. He did have a message to conservatives. A few little things stuck out in this that just kind of hit home to me whenever I'm thinking about our snowflake society that we're building. But it says to conservatives, ask yourself truly, what has modern conservatism managed to conserve? What does it seek to conserve? The natural environment, Western culture, ethnic autonomy, religion, the nation, the race? Nothing is conserved. The natural environment is industrialized, pulverized, and commoditized. Western culture, this is the paragraph that I was like,
Hmm.
is this us? Western culture is trivialized, pulped, and blended into a smear of meaningless nothing, with the only tenets and beliefs seemingly held to are the myth of the individual, the value of work, productivity for the benefit of your capitalist owners, and the sovereignty of private property to ensure none of us get grand ideas of taking the unearned wealth of our owners. This kind of goes back to eminent domain, right? The right to own
No, this kind of
property.
goes back to his communist roots. Obviously,
Well,
these are very,
but sovereignty of
very
private.
Marxist. This is a very Marxist take on conservatism.
Well, we pretend that we have sovereignty of property, right? Our
No, we
private.
obviously don't.
We
Yeah, we obviously don't because
we
you pay your
believe it.
property tax,
Well, sure, but
right?
we try
What
and
is
tell
property
ourselves.
tax? But what is property tax but paying rent to the government to live in your house?
Well, I understand what it
I
is,
mean,
John, but we
yeah,
tell ourselves
right.
these things. This is what I said. We tell ourselves
Yeah, it's not an illegitimate
until
criticism.
until eminent domain kicks in, and then we're like, oh shit, this isn't really mine. I mean,
It never was. Yeah,
we have homeowners all over this country who think that they own the house that they're living in. And
Yeah,
you
what happens
do.
when you pay it off and you still
You,
have to pay your
right.
property tax?
You do. But you can't fucking take it with you, and the place you're on is rented. you know
Oh yeah.
but they don't get it till it's in their face. But this idea,
Hmm.
the myth of the individual, this is something that I've mentioned this to you before. uh, we are way too individualized in this country
And I've
now.
and I've told you before that I disagree with your definition of individualism.
Why is from the standpoint that, I mean, we are not
From the standpoint of you say like, oh, we need people to validate us because we're individuals and I'm special and I'm the only one that matters. It's not individualism. That's narcissism. Different thing. Individualism is about being doing what is best for you, doing what is like objectively
okay.
best for you,
and that's and that
doing
and that's
be,
not
having personal responsibility,
and
which
that's
means taking
just as bad.
responsibility for your actions instead of blaming outside forces. That's
And that's
helping your community out because it benefits you when you do so,
not
not
individualism.
selfishness. Yes, it is.
Helping the
It is
community
not.
is not about individualism.
Yes, it is because that is doing
No,
what is
that's about
best for you. That is doing
selflessness.
what is in your best interest. It is in
Help
your best interest to have a vibrant community to live in. Absolutely, it
not
is.
according to most people out there anymore. Not if you look at
That's because
Facebook.
that's not individualism. That's not individualism.
Well, just like everything else in the English language, we are seeing the evolution of what individualism is, John. Things
No,
change. Definitions
that's
change.
not what it is. No, that's not what individual. That's not when people say individualism. That's not what they're saying.
To most people, to a lot of people in this country, the individual is more important than the whole. That's what the new
Okay.
individualism is.
No, I mean that's selfishness. That's a
I
totally different
understand
thing.
what it is, John. I'm just saying that when you look out there, that's what it's becoming. You
No,
know,
that's not individualism.
I
I mean,
understand that you don't think it's individualism,
it's not though.
but words change.
Not like that.
The way we define words and the way we it changes.
No, just
What
because
was a
you
trap? You
use
know what a
just
trap used to
because
be? A trap
just
used to be a
because
thing
you
you put out in the
use
fucking woods to catch a bear.
and it still is.
But now it also has a dick.
Yeah, just because you use a word
It's-
incorrectly, just because you use a word incorrectly does not mean that the definition of that word has changed. It
no,
just
but
means
when
that you're an idiot.
hold on, no, John. When society as a whole begins to change the definition of a word, that's how a word evolves.
Yeah, but you can't just change. That's like
William fucking
saying,
Shakespeare made up words all the time, and now they
yeah,
stick in our English language.
yeah, but they don't change. The definitions of
Sure,
those words don't
definitions of
change. A
words have
cuckold is
changed.
a cuckold.
Pull
An
up a
assassin is an assassin.
pull up a dictionary from 1700, and you tell me if words haven't changed in their
I'm not saying they
definitions.
don't ever change. What I'm saying
Okay,
is,
then that's what you're seeing is a
but
change in
no,
what
no.
individualism is perceived.
Individualism is no. That's not what I'm talking about, though. Well, then I guess we'll have to use a new word: classical individualism,
There you
if you want
go.
to go with
That's a
that.
better look at it because the perceived
So
idea of
fucking
what
retarded.
individualism is full of narcissism and selfishness. That's what people, the younger generations, are perceiving as individualism.
It's
Look
because
at
they're not
me.
being taught about what individualism is.
You're right. They are not. And it is warping what it is, and it's turning it into a mamby-pamby society of look at me, I'm important because I'm me. I'm an individual. That's what they're calling themselves. I'm an individual, and I'm important. So
But
my
they're not
voice
though,
is
because
a
no, I've never heard anyone, at least with this point of view, who says I'm an individual. It's always like I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this. Intersectionality is what we're talking about. It's always I identify as this, that, and this and that.
right, and it
You
is
know,
their identity that makes them a unique individual. That's how they
right?
look
But it
at it.
really doesn't, because it's just labeling, putting yourself in a box, saying
Sure,
I'm a this, I'm a that. Therefore, you
exactly.
know what I think now because I identify as this.
Right, because they believe that they're in that box by themselves, yet they've just put themselves in a box with every other transgender black woman. Right?
Right.
I get it. I get the moronicness of it all, but I understand that this is where it's going. I mean, so many people are only focused on themselves now. We don't have a sense of community in this country like we used to. We don't
Yeah.
hold to those same tenets and values that we used to. And he hits on that in the right way to a certain extent in this, where he talks about how much we fail in these societies like this. It's sad. Um, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I blame social media. I swear to God, John, if social media wasn't there, we wouldn't be here now.
I
We
don't know. I
wouldn't be
blame
in this
France.
place. We would not be in this place. No, France was
I blame
always there.
France.
France was always there, and they never liked us.
Well, no, I blame France because that's where postmodernism came from. That's where all this your new definition, your new speak definition of individualism comes from France.
No, I think that comes from snowflakes.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's comes from postmodernism, which comes from France.
See, you're just looking for somebody to blame, so you don't have to take the
It's not my
responsibility
fault.
onto our populace.
Oh no, we
It's
definitely
our
took it
people.
and
It's
we
not
definitely took
France.
it and ran with it.
It's not
But I'm
France.
saying the original ideas came from France, and then they got into the universities, and the universities started teaching it to our children, and then our children graduated from college and entered the real world, and it wasn't postmodern, it wasn't intersectional, and they started throwing a fit, and now we're here where we are now.
I disagree. I think it happened with the first activist uh, rally in America, wherever that was,
So
whatever the
you mean
first one was,
the
whatever
Boston Massacre?
the Tea Party, the Bosque. Yeah, there you
No, the
go.
Boston
What
Massacre,
was
not
the
the Tea Party.
massacre before or after the Tea Party?
Before,
Before.
I
Yeah.
believe
So
so.
that.
I
Yeah.
believe that's true.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So
I'm not 100%
if
on the
that was
timeline.
the first activist situation in this country, then yeah, that's where it started. As soon as people realized that they could fight back, you know, they've been fighting back ever since. But now it's just
Well,
turned
what about the
into
peasant revolt in London in like the 1300s?
that's in another
That doesn't
country,
count.
John. That doesn't count here.
but
We're a
that's
separate entity.
but
We're
well, wait,
America.
wait, wait,
We're not
because a lot of
influenced by anybody.
that's not true at all.
Come on, John. We're America. We eat
Oh
French
man,
fries that did not come from France.
no, they didn't.
As I said, we eat French fries that did not
Yeah,
come from France.
they didn't.
That's that makes us American. We will
It
fucking
does.
call them French fries. We will fucking capitalize French on those too if we want to, and we don't give a damn if you had nothing to do with it, France. So fuck you and your postmodernism.
That's
We're America. That's how we
right.
think.
Damn it. Well,
And
no, it was actually it's a French method of frying, but yeah, I get what you're
what? Putting
saying.
shit in oil?
Yeah,
Is that was that a French method?
that was French method, and then it
Really?
was I believe it was
Shit, I
God, what
think
country is it that they came from? What you thought you were?
I figured we'd been frying shit for a long time. As long as there'd been lard, we were frying shit. Jesus
Nope.
Christ.
But no, they came from. And yes, Michael Vega, I do know my genealogy.
Do you know it
Um,
specifically, or like DNA test, or you just
no, I've
know
never
from
done a DNA
family? Yeah,
test, but I
that's where I'm
know.
at too.
Yeah.
I know what I've been told.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have proof for it too.
Well,
Like, it's not like I just
well,
my
that's
mom told me
well.
I was Native American, and then I started putting that on
Well,
college
no.
application.
What was the proof that they gave you?
Well, I have like letters from overseas. I have Ellis Island papers
Hmm.
of my
Showing where
great
your parents came from.
grandparents,
Oh,
my great
grandparents.
grandparents.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. One of them, they both sides of my family came from Ireland. One of them from Tipperary, the other one from Clare.
And do you know? But you don't know if it's pure Irish bloodline past that point.
Well, no, no. I mean, it is. It would have to be because if both sides are from Ireland,
From Ireland, yeah. But
right?
that
Which
doesn't
means that
mean that their
that means that all
lineage.
four. That means that their kids were from Ireland, or not from Ireland, but with Irish ancestry. Which means that their kids are also
Well,
Irish
the
ancestry.
assumption is that if your grandparents were both in Ireland, the assumption is
My
their
great
parents or
grandparents.
your great grandparents. The assumption is that their parents were from Ireland too.
Wait, you mean my great great grandparents
Right,
or my?
right. If
Because
you
my
said your
grandparents were born in
who
either
came across
one.
Ellis Island, your great grandparents.
My great grandparents, yeah.
So they came from Ireland. So the assumption is that their parents, your great great grandparents, were all also Irish.
Presumably.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
up until your great great grandparents, that's as far as you know definitively as pure
Yeah.
Irish. Gotcha.
Hmm.
That's what I was trying to
Well,
say
there's no
because I know
such
there's
thing.
some mix there with Scott and Europe and
Well, yeah.
you
So
know.
there's no real because I mean they were conquered by the Romans, so there could be some like Italian in there, or French, or
Right.
Spanish, or English. There's a lot of mixtures going on there. Normans, the Normans invaded and conquered Ireland as well.
I mean,
So I
we
mean,
are assuming that both your grandparents were born in Ireland,
yeah, my great grandparents were
or your
all
great
born,
grandparents.
all eight of them.
They were
Yeah,
born in Ireland.
they're right.
Okay. Well, at least you've got that much.
Yeah.
All I know is that I've got white. I've been told that there's some English blood, some Black Dutch, and I should have a decent amount of Choctaw, Cherokee, and Chickasaw Indian in me. But I've never had
Probably,
a DNA
hopefully more
test.
than
The irony
yeah.
is, my brother was told the same thing, yet he went and got a DNA test, and not a drop of Native American blood shows up in there, but from somewhere he gets Asian blood. But from what I understand, we all have a little bit of Asian blood in us.
Probably.
I think that's a kind of a common thing to find in blood throughout the world. But yeah, so from a genealogy standpoint, yeah, I think I need to get a DNA test just so I fucking know.
I kind of want to, but then I did see that people were having this whole conspiracy about them taking your
Hmm.
DNA and storing it, and then I saw that there was a thing that where like that was actually happening, and
Right,
then people were coming out being like, "Told you so, told you so." So I'm like, I'm kind of wary about doing that now.
but there's a solution for that now.
Hmm.
And the solution for that is you find there's two or three now DNA companies that store your DNA information on the blockchain. They use blockchain technology. And so if anybody wants access to your DNA for studies or whatever, they have to come to you and they have to pay you for it.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep. The only way they can get their hands on it is if they pay you money for it because they can't access it on the blockchain.
Yeah,
You
I'd
have
like
the
that.
only way to get to your information.
See, I would want to take the one. I think it's like the ancestry one, because I'm not as much as interested in like what percentage of each ethnicity or whatever that I am. More interested in the genealogy, the who was in my family.
Right. Right.
That's more of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that was that. To be honest with you, it was odd, though. I didn't expect that I could ever find out. There's a little part of me that is like, if I am, if I do have Native American heritage, Cherokee, I've always been curious if there's any chance that I have any bloodline to Sequoia,
Hmm.
who was like one of the Cherokee that wrote the Cherokee alphabet. He was one of the first Indians to create a language alphabet, a written language for a Native American tribe. So I'd always wondered that. When DNA tests, when they started talking about those, I was like, maybe. But I don't, after my brother, I'm like, maybe everything I was told was bullshit. Because it appears that he and I, based off what we've been told, we came from different fathers. I mean, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
wonder how many problems those tests have caused in families. You know, these secrets coming out. Someone had a mistress, and you know, or I guess the wife cheated and had a baby from someone else, and just kind of told her husband that it was his. I wonder how many times that's happened since those tests have been widely available.
ironically enough, that has actually been what has kind of kept me from going ahead and pursuing it is because I don't want to find out that I'm not full brother with my brother.
Right. Well, I mean, that wouldn't change your guys' relationship. I
But you
mean,
know
you
what I
still
mean,
be
right?
brother. You still have the experiences that you had growing up and all that.
Well, it's the kind of thing. It's like, okay, you know, suddenly finding out that everything that you have been told in your life was a
Yeah.
lie. Yeah, it's
Sure.
like I don't want to face that necessarily,
Yeah.
and it just seems like I would have to.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But it's he this manifesto, while it is much like it was pointed out earlier, it is what it is. It's just, I don't know. It's the preachings of a madman is basically what it equates to a certain extent. But he does hit on some salient points here and there throughout it that make you stop and think about where we are as a country. Now, it doesn't necessarily make me want to become more supremacist, doesn't make me want to be more nationalist, but it does
Yeah.
expose to me things that I have questioned about our society and that I continue to question about our society. And, um, and ultimately, this is I don't know. His take on immigration just really and diversity, that was the one that got me, John. That was the one that was like, wow, that just makes you stop and think for just 30 seconds. Even if 30 seconds, it's just like, really? Because this is
Yeah.
what he says about diversity, and I thought this was a big takeaway for me. Diversity is weak. Why is diversity said to be our greatest strength? Does anyone even ask why? It is spoken like a mantra and repeated ad infinitum. Diversity is our greatest strength. Diversity is our greatest strength. Diversity is our greatest strength. It is said throughout the media, spoken by politicians, educators, and celebrities, but no one ever seems to give a reason why, which they have. They've given
Mhm.
reasons, this diversity in the different cultures makes us stronger because it brings more and new things, blah, blah, blah. We've heard this, right?
Mhm.
What gives a nation strength? And how does diversity increase that strength? What part of diversity causes this increase in strength? No one can give an answer. Meanwhile, the diverse nations across the world are scenes of endless social, political, religious, and ethnic conflict. Now, to pause here for a second, diverse nations. That's kind of
Mhm.
on point a little bit. Would you not agree?
Well, so it depends on what kind of diversity we're talking about, right? We're talking about ethnicity,
We're talking
like
about his type of
ethnic,
diversity.
uh,
Yes. Uh,
ethnic diversity. So I don't have a problem
Cultural
with
diversity is a big one
it. Cultural is a big problem, I think.
because that's his
Like I
problem
said,
with it.
right. Well, like I said to you, off mic, if you move to another country, you're expected to integrate within their culture. And I don't think that's too much to ask. I think if you want to live in a place, you should adapt to that place's culture. I
But
mean, I
that's
don't think that's too much to ask at all.
but you do realize that's an outdated standard in the present world,
Yeah, obviously. But
right?
I'm saying so
Yeah,
again, it depends on
it's a
what
good
kind of
rule of thumb, right?
right.
It's respect,
I mean, if I was going to move to Japan, I would start
right?
adapting to Japanese culture. I would learn the language, I would learn the customs, traditions, all that kind of stuff, and try to be as Japanese as a whitey can be.
Yeah. But our younger generations aren't growing up with parents who are thinking the same way to teach their kids that.
Right. Well, they're also not allowed to teach the kids that,
True.
and then the kids
Uh,
are learning in school, about how everything is equal and all, just
Well, he goes on to say the United States is one of, and he didn't even capitalize states in that. He capitalized United, but not states. He fucking New
well,
England,
to be fair,
Australians, oh,
there's a
fucking
lot of typos
fucking
in this,
Australians. The
a lot
United
of typos.
States is one of the most diverse nations on Earth, and they are about an inch away from tearing each other to pieces. He's not too far off the point there. We're not far from.
I don't know. I really think that that's just alarmism.
Really?
I really think I don't. Yeah, I think that like what's put out in the media and what's even on the internet is largely like hyperbolic. I really don't think that we're that close because you don't have the vast majority of people who we would call normies. They're not plugged in to this kind of stuff. They're not they're not ready to rise up or cause violence. They're just trying to live their lives, right? It's a very small group of people on either side who are involved
So,
in.
would that mean that you don't agree with like this idea that a potential civil war is brewing in this country?
I don't think that it's gonna happen. If it does happen, I don't think it's gonna be in the next like year or so. I think maybe like 10 years, 15 years max. But I really don't think, and it's not going to be like the last civil war that we had, where we have just armies fighting each other. it's going to be like terrorist attacks.
So instead of
Kind
an
of like what
inch
we've had.
away, instead of an inch away, because
I think more like a foot away.
I'm looking at that as more, more on a theological level, like one day for God could have been thousands and thousands of years, kind of thing. An inch away means, in the next 5 to 10 years. That's a very short time span in the
Yeah.
greater scheme of things, right? So we're not 6 inches, maybe 6 inches, right? Brazil, with all its racial diversity, is completely fractured as a nation where people cannot get along and separate and self-segregate and separate and self-segregate whenever possible. We do that here too, right? I think we self-segregate on a consistent
We
basis.
balkanized, a little bit, yeah.
Have a good one,
And
Michael
see you,
Vega.
Michael
Thanks for
Vega.
being here.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
think we should wrap it up soon.
well, I'll let you know when I'm done, John.
I'll just
I'm almost done
leave.
with this segment.
Bitch.
So anyway, South Africa, with all its diversity, is turning into a bloody backwater as its diversity increases. Black on other black, black on white, white on black, black on Indian doesn't matter. It's ethnicity versus ethnicity. They all turn on each other in the end. What
Yeah,
it
see, I disagree with his premise there as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are like ethnic issues, but most of their issues are largely economic.
Yes and no. I I see racial disparity between, say, African Americans and Hispanics here
Well, we're
in
talking
our
about South
state.
America. We're talking about South
Right.
Africa and
Well, yeah, but he's
South America as well.
but he's basically lumping the United States, Brazil, all the diverse nations into the same thing. He's just
Well, no, I
pointing
think
out different
he's
things in
putting
different places, but these things are
no,
happening all over.
he's placing blame for all the problems on ethnicity.
Yes, I
He's not
understand.
acknowledging.
Immigrated ethnicity, people that shouldn't be there from other places.
Right, sure.
Right. Why is it that what gives Western nations strength, which is diversity, is not what gives Eastern nations, China, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, their strength? How are they so strong? China set to be the world's most
Mm,
dominant nation in this century whilst lacking diversity. Why is it that their non diverse nations do so much better than our own and on so many different metrics? Now,
you know why?
he is wrong
So
there.
yeah, absolutely. Because with the exception of China, we are the military of the rest of these countries
Well,
over there. So they don't have to spend as much money
but he's
uh on military, and they're able to invest in other things.
yeah, that's the wrong strength you're looking at, John. He's talking about the strength of the country internally, where he's showing that diversity in
They're
these
not like
other
culturally.
countries, diversity in these other countries weakens from the inside. Whereas these Eastern nations that stick to limited immigration and stay primarily to their own culture don't have as much division within their countries. But I disagree with that to a certain extent. Um, China has lots of social issues and social, economic, and political issues that
Yeah.
go on that aren't stemmed from minorities being
And then he wants to talk about
immigrants.
like low fertility rates. Japan has very low fertility rates.
Well, that's their own fault, though. That was instituted.
No, that's China you're talking about.
Oh, you said
Japan,
Japan.
it's
Yes.
because yeah, Japan has very low
Well, they're
fertility rates.
they're kind of a size. They have a size issue too, don't they? They don't want to
Well, yeah, but
overpopulate.
they're sure, but I mean, for there's nothing stop. There's a ton of Japanese people like in Brazil. There's a huge Japanese population there. There's a huge Japanese population on the west coast of the
It's
U.S.
still not very procreative.
No, I mean they are once they get to other places. It's largely due to it's largely due to either the men being uninterested in procreating and women who are more career driven and therefore not as interested in relationships and things like that like they used to be.
So
And
people
so they're
just
having a
so people just don't want to hook up in Japan. Once they
right
leave Japan, they're all good with hooking up.
for the most part. I mean, a lot of
Right.
it. I don't want to blame hentai for it, but that is a big thing over there.
They
You
would
know,
rather jerk off to hentai.
right?
Wow.
They get into some freaky shit over there. I'm telling you.
Well, we get into freaky shit here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We learned it from them, and then
No, no,
expounded upon
we
it.
caused it. No, we caused it, and then those
No,
bombs fucked them up.
no,
those
Japan, all those
bombs.
Asian countries they wrote the books on these things. One of them was called the
Uh,
Kama Sutra.
well, yeah. I mean, that's if
I
you
mean,
count India as Asian,
they
which I mean,
are.
technically it is.
Indians consider themselves Asian.
Yeah, they're a subcontinent, though. I mean, we can get into those are semantic arguments, but yeah,
Subcontinent.
that's why it's called the subcontinent of India. Yes,
I don't understand why. Because it's so big, but it's part of another continent.
right. It's so big, but it's so culturally different from the rest of like East Asia that is, considered a different. But it's not also it's also not Middle
It's
Eastern,
the sand.
so it's kind of its own. It's kind of its own deal.
Sand will do that. Sand can shift things a little, so it straightens out
Hmm.
the eyes a little. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
because you squint more and it blows, and I don't know. Anyway, so I highly recommend people read this manifesto only from the standpoint of you need to see what goes on in the minds of these people. I don't agree with the video being out there because I'm a father, that kind of blah blah blah.
yeah,
Don't love to see people dying anymore. It's not my thing. But yeah, I do agree with you that it's a good idea to understand what goes on in the minds of people who do things like this, so
absolutely.
you can have a better understanding of what the fuck's going on in your head. So when you think things, you actually like talk about it in your head before you just act on it, right?
Right.
But he put a lot of fucking thought into this, John. He really did. 2 years in the making this was. He's
Yeah.
been working on this for 2 years. Um, but
Well, I mean, the thing is, most of what he said was already a lot of the ethno-nationalist talking points. He didn't really come up with a lot of new things, except for mixing some Marxism in there, from obviously from his past, and huge criticism of conservatism.
all right,
That
so
was kind of
I'll end
that was
with
also, I think, from a Marxist standpoint. But yeah, go ahead.
a very pointed question, and give me your best answer and tell me what where you stand on this. You
Hmm.
read the manifesto,
Yep.
and putting aside some of the fallacies that he threw out there, or some of the uneducated information he had, because most of his sources, by the way, were Wikipedia.
Yeah, which
Um,
is actually not that bad of a source. I mean, I'm just saying. Usually, it's not.
when you talk about trust, John, Wikipedia is the place you need to never trust anything you read. You always get a second
No.
source.
Well, yeah, you check their sources. The sources that are linked at the bottom of every Wikipedia page, check those.
Written by men. It's enough said. I
Okay.
mean, it's any Joe Blow can get in there and write something. Yes, I understand that the fact checkers, blah blah blah, but
And
you know,
also check the sources, yeah.
any college worth its salt will tell you Wikipedia is not an acceptable source.
It's a lot better than it used to be, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's all besides the
But
point.
here's the question for you:
Hmm.
from his take on from a nationalist standpoint and a supremacist standpoint, talking about ethno cleansing through this, lack of fertility or lack of procreation on the part of the white race versus the inherent increased amount in uh, other races. Do you agree with him? Not what he did, but do you agree
Hmm.
with him or disagree with him as a whole from the manifesto standpoint?
In what way?
How do you see validity to the manifesto, or is it just a bunch of bullshit?
Well, I mean, a lot of what he was doing was trying to accelerate the collapse of society, so he didn't always put in what he actually believes. Right, a lot of it was, he threw a lot of memes in there. He threw a lot of, other just nonsense
Right? It's
in
one
there.
thing to talk about diversity of culture, but then you're throwing in pop culture references throughout the whole fucking thing,
Yeah, I mean, he
right?
even had the Navy SEAL copy
Yes,
pasta in
yes, that
there,
was
which is
awesome.
by the way is one of my favorite copy pastas of all time. That was fucking amazing. but it was a good place to put it in too. But um, but anyway, no, I don't think that I don't agree with his premises. I don't agree with saying we need to preserve like the white race. I think the white race will preserve itself if it wants to. I don't think we need to have a fascistic government to force that to happen. I don't want to put restrictions on who people can procreate with. I don't want to put restrictions on who people can associate with. None of that is a good idea.
What about what about where we stand with immigration? Keep letting people come in. Keep bringing the diversity on. We're good
Well, I
with it. We
mean,
can take it. We're good.
no, I think we need to have stronger immigration laws, especially when it comes to integration. I think it's important to push, culture, like our, Western culture on people who come in, from non-Western countries. I think that's a good idea because that's what kind of culture we have.
Well,
Just like my example before that I gave, if you moved, if I were to move to Japan, which I wouldn't do, but if I would integrate into that culture. I don't see a problem with expecting that in reverse.
well, I'll leave this food for thought. Forced integration seems very unconstitutional to me.
I'm not saying forced integration, encouraged integration.
We already do
We need to. I
encourage
think we need to put
integration.
more of a focus on our culture instead of this virtue signaling about accepting all cultures. You can accept someone's culture, but you need to integrate into that country.
Well, okay. Well, when you put it like that, I mean, just
You know what I mean? Like,
we have been recommending integration for years. We always tell them when they come into this country, you need to integrate into the country. You need to learn the
no, we don't
language.
though.
Well, they do. Well, yes, that's part of the citizenship
People who are,
process is trying to
yeah,
get you to
but
learn
people who
enough
are,
language and integrate enough to where you can become a citizen, right? I mean,
yeah, but
it's
socially
what
is
we
what I'm
want.
saying.
Sure, and it's there. I mean, it's not like we don't ask people. We want them to. We let them know we want them to integrate into society, become an American, be part of America.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not expected of.
without forcing it, you'll never get it
And then there's
because we have too much freedom here. We're too free.
and there's this self segregation. Where they'll have all their little communities all over the place where they don't have to interact with the rest of America.
Should that
They
be
can stay in
stopped?
their isolated communities. See, I'm not going to force someone to live somewhere. I'm
Right,
not going to force someone not to live somewhere. So it's really something that you have to do again at a cultural level, not
right.
something that the government needs to do. Something that we as a society need to do.
Yeah, it's just it's a how though, right? How do you
Yeah,
even fucking begin? How can you even begin? And are we too far past the point to even start trying?
I don't think so. No, I mean, we've done it in the past.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we shut down immigration in the past, and to allow the flood of immigrants, especially the flood of Irish immigrants, to give them time to integrate. That's where they went from, being seen as criminals and ne'er do wells to a lot of the time, not anymore, but in the past, after the integration, if you saw an Irish guy, you thought he was a cop. You were like, oh, he was probably a cop. Don't sell whatever to him. Don't talk about that around him. He's probably a cop. Which change is completely different from oh, he's probably in the mob
So
because
I
he's
knew it.
Irish.
I knew I was right. We need to shut the borders down.
Yeah, I'm not against doing that for a little while.
Yeah. Amen. Let's get that going. All right. So we appreciate everybody that's out there has been listening to us ramble on and talk about our stuff. Hey,
Yeah.
just understand New Zealand, it's a privilege. Here, it's a right. And that is what is always going to make the difference.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can sit around in another country and cast aspersions on America because you don't know what we have to live. You don't know how we're living.
Hmm.
You don't know unless you've been in it. And if you're in a society that what you see as a privilege is a right for us, you you can't even. That's apples and oranges, brother. That's apples and oranges, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we appreciate everybody listening. If you like what you hear, and hit that like button. If you're new to the place, hit the subscribe button. If you have some friends that have nothing better to do, get them to get on and hit the subscribe button. John, there's a couple of other places they can find us at. If you will point that direction out.
Right there. Now they can find us on Twitter at the GenGapP. So if you haven't followed us already, please do. And you can also join our Discord server. Link should be in the description, as long as Robert was not incompetent.
Can never guarantee that.
Yeah.
Hey, John, we don't have anything exciting. Do we have anybody coming anytime soon? We don't have anybody coming for shooting shit next week, do we?
Not next week. The next guest that I have lined up for is Stan from Angry Guy Rants on the 29th, which is a Friday.
Of this
so
month?
We'll be looking at the news. Yes. So we'll be looking at the news with him. And then I've been talking to some pretty high-profile YouTubers about coming on in April, but I'm not going to make an announcement as to who until it's set in stone.
Gotcha.
So
that
should be exciting.
Makes perfectly good sense. As long as you're out there pounding the pavement. Have you gotten any closer to getting me my interview with the Orange Man?
I'm working on it. But doesn't seem very responsive. I think he's busy or something.
Question. When you say working on it, have you gone past the point of just formulating some bullshit excuse in your head?
No, I've not.
Gotcha. All right, just wanted to make sure I knew where we stood. So, John, I appreciate everything. We're glad we're here tonight. Had fun talking to you. We'll be back on Monday night at 9 o'clock for Shooting the Shit. We'll have another rousing bowl of cherries to eat up. And you like cherries, John?
Fuck yeah, I like cherries.
Yeah, they're hard to find these days. Yeah. Bing! All right, so I'm going to get the hell out of here. John, you have a good night. Thanks for stopping by, and go clean your guns.
Yeah.
Peace.